All right, so today we are talking about different mediums, picking what you are going to do your prints on. We're going to be talking about the most popular three: aluminum chroma prints, which is a sheet of aluminum metal print, just standard framed prints, and canvas prints. Now, first and foremost, I want to say that I firmly believe you should pick which medium you think best represents your work. You should be making your art for yourself, and whatever you think it looks the best on, that should be it. Now, to increase print sales and appease to more customers, a lot of people, including myself, give customers the option when you pick an image, you can pick which medium you want it on, so they can actually add their own preference to the image and make it look how they want for their home or their office, wherever they're going to be displaying the piece. But some people also prefer to only offer prints on specific mediums, and that is totally fine. But you need to make sure you are happy with how it looks on whatever medium you pick. Okay, that being said, we are going to start with metal. This is a 20 by 30 aluminum chroma print of one of my images. When I first started printing as a photographer, aluminum was my thing. It was right when it came out. It was really exciting. The main thing with aluminum is it shows prints incredibly detailed and incredibly vibrant. It just shows those colors really, really well. Aluminum prints are made through a process called sublimation, where you use a special kind of printer. You print the image on a special kind of paper and with special inks, and you get a piece of aluminum that has white. Generally, it has white on it. And the print shop uses heat to apply the image to the metal substrate. And this process just makes incredibly detailed images. They are ready to hang, similar to a canvas print. Moderately priced. You can get cheap ones, Costco style, or you can get really, really high-end ones. And you can get several sheens. Now, that brings us to my issue with metal prints. This print is a few years old. It was hung in my living room when I bought it. The back of my house is a big bank of windows, and every time I walked into the room, all I could see when I looked at this print was my backyard, and it drove me crazy. Even right now, you can see all this reflection in the print. You can basically, it's just like a mirror into my shop. And that's really frustrating for me. I hate reflections. I think it's just such a huge distraction from being able to actually see the art and focus on what is in the piece and not all these other things, all these outside contributions. Now, you can nowadays get different sheens. I think they look kind of off. That's just my personal taste. They just look kind of weird having it matte or even like satin. So I stopped printing to metal. I still make it an option for my customers of my own photos, not of anything that I do in my shop. I don't sell them very often. I actually have this one hung in my shop to try to dissuade people from printing on metal. But I do know some photographers that print to metal and print incredibly gorgeous images. And if you're hanging the piece in a room that either doesn't have any windows or is specifically being lit, taking this into account, the gloss, the reflectivity, then they're totally usable and they can look really, really cool. Because if you print them large and you have a really high resolution image, they just look amazing. But if you don't have a really high resolution image and the lighting isn't perfect, I think they look awful. So pros: lightweight, ready to hang, amazing vibrance, amazing colors, amazing contrast, amazing detail. Cons: a very specific look, but most importantly, the high gloss or most common metal prints are just incredibly reflective, and they just reflect everything in your house. So lighting is really, really important. All right, now it's time for standard framed paper prints. A bunch of awesome benefits for this. It is the most classic standard look. They've been around forever. It just fits into any room, any decor. On top of that, you can change the moldings, the colors, the matte color. There's just a ton of options to really allow you to customize it and make it fit in any environment. On top of this, if you're printing to paper, you can sell paper prints and your customer can frame it themselves and add their own personal touch to it. On top of that, you can print to a ton of different papers that allow varying different price levels, different looks, textures, archival qualities. There's so many different options with papers. The main one simply being between photo grade paper and fine art paper. I personally prefer fine art paper for everything. It lasts forever and it just adds a certain depth to it. It just looks really, really good. Costs a little bit more money, but totally worth it. Now, of course, along with framed prints comes the disadvantage of reflectivity. Same as the metal prints, but not as extreme. You're going to have glass or you're going to have acrylic in the front of your frame, which is going to cause reflections. Now you can get museum glass, which is not reflective, or they even have non-reflective acrylic now that just looks really weird. I strongly advise you to avoid that. Museum glass is so absurdly expensive. I don't know any photographers or artists that can afford to use it in their work. Maybe if you are having a piece custom framed for yourself, you can afford it. I cannot. You also have the option of simply removing the glass. I recently did a video about this piece where I removed the glass and it looks absolutely amazing. It's just kind of weird because you're not used to seeing frames displayed without glass. It's also going to cut down on the protection of your piece, but generally the print itself is lower cost, so if it's damaged over time, you can replace it, unless it's like a limited edition or something like that, so you're gonna want that extra protection of using glass. The glass in a frame is not nearly as reflective as a glossy aluminum print, but it's still there. And if you use glossy paper within the frame, it's gonna add to that. So using matte paper in a frame is definitely a lower level of reflections than an aluminum print. But framing is really expensive. Unless you're using a cheap IKEA or just a cheap frame you buy online, custom framing is crazy expensive, especially if you're going big. So if you want large prints, framing is the least viable option because they're super heavy, they're super expensive, so they just don't work with most consumers these days, making metal and canvas prints an awesome option. But for a mid-size print, my personal preference is frame prints with a matte. I think they look absolutely amazing. They're just so versatile, and you have so many options with the different papers you can use. So the pros of framing are paper options and the ability to customize it to fit in basically any decor. The disadvantages are the reflectivity, the cost, the weight, and the cost. They're just really expensive if you like large prints. All right, now last but not least, we have canvas. My shop photo to canvas obviously prints a lot of canvas, though these days I print pretty much just as much paper as I do canvas. The old owner focused on canvas, the name stuck. Now canvas, I think, has gotten a really bad rap. As a photographer myself, I had no interest in printing to canvas. I was very biased against it for a very long time. I think that is because you're so used to seeing really crappy quality canvases in hotel rooms, in restaurants, in banks, places like that. Canvas is really easy to make look really bad. But a couple years before I owned this shop, a customer of mine wanted canvas prints and I had them done for him at a reputable shop, and I was really surprised at how good they looked. They hold a great amount of detail considering you're printing on a textured surface. They're really lightweight and they're super budget friendly. Canvas you can do in different sheens, so you can print on matte canvas, but if you want that boosted vibrancy or the boosted contrast, you can varnish it with a satin or a glossier varnish. There's archival grades of canvas where they will essentially last forever. So you really do have a lot of options. They also do have a pretty classic look because so many artists have painted on canvas for so many years that they're just something that people are very much used to. So they fit in more modern decor, but they also look great in old classic settings. And there's just a ton of options with them. I do all my canvases custom, so I can do any size to match the ratio of the photo without cropping it. There's just a ton of flexibility, and they're incredibly lightweight. So you can print a giant canvas, and it's going to be even lighter than the aluminum, so you can hang them really easily. So canvas quickly became one of my favorite things to print on because it's just so budget friendly, especially for me. Holds detail really, really well. I generally use a satin finish, so you have kind of a good mid-grade level of contrast and vibrancy. No reflections. The gloss, you'll get a little bit more, but with satin and matte, there's no reflections pretty much at all. So the room lighting can really go along with any canvas you hang, and it's just not something you have to be worried about. So the pros of canvas are they hold detail really, really well. They show vibrant colors with different sheens. There's a ton of options size-wise. You can add external frames. There's just all sorts of different options that you can do with canvas. If you buy high-end canvas, they will last forever. They can be pulled from their frames and rolled up and shipped to save a ton of money, restretched when they get to their new location. The only real con I see with canvas is it's just really easy to make it look bad. So if you're gonna print with canvas, you need to make sure you use a printer you've seen their work and you trust that they're gonna do a quality job. The actual printing can be poor, but if it's not stretched right, it can sag, it can look uneven and wavy. That's what you're used to from those hotel prints. And that's what generally happens if you buy from the cheap online companies. A couple years down the road, they're not going to look very good. And most of those places use solvent and latex inks, so they're not going to last. All right, well, I hope that was helpful in you learning a little bit about the different mediums you can print to and helping you pick what is going to best represent your work. Again, like I said at the beginning of the video, I think what's most important is you picking a medium that you think really just shows your work the best. But each of these three options has pros and cons. Go over the list, figure out which stuff is more important to you, and that will get you going down the right path. Thanks for watching. If this was helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.